Hi, this is Kim Nelson. Doing another video here for this Magnolia cuff. I'm going to take this into 3D Coat and do sculpting. I don't intend to really finish out this cuff, it's a big project, but I do want to do some sculpting with it so you can see how that works. So to do that, I need to export each piece that I need separately. You can export either in OBJ or STL. 3D Coat doesn't care. I always export in OBJ into 3D Coat, and then when I bring it back into Rhino, I bring it back in as an STL. So I export from Rhino as OBJ, and I export from 3D Coat as STL. So. Okay, and I'm going to cancel. Something I have learned about Rhino 7, it's worth mentioning, is that when I export it from here, sometimes I get mesh errors, which can be a particular problem with 3D printing. I've actually had clients complain to me that parts that I sent them no longer work, and I've been doing this forever, so I know what a good mesh is. I know they're closed meshes, I know they're tight meshes. There's no other problem except for I get some hinky results when I come out this way. So instead of doing that, I make a mesh from a NURBS object first. As many polys as possible. I select the mesh and I export it. I'll call that the cuff. And just accept the defaults. Then I'll delete that mesh because I don't want to be confused by it. I will pick my petals from the lowest level down. Okay. And just keep doing this. Put these two out together. I can actually put the three of them out together. Deciding if it's worth doing. And I'll do them individually. It'll be less confusing for the video. So polymesh. Export. Magnolia 2. Mesh. Export. Magnolia 3. Mesh. Export. Magnolia 4. Mesh. Export. Magnolia 5. mesh, export, mesh, export, mesh, export, and I've left some meshes behind accidentally. I want to make sure I get rid of all of those. I wasn't being terribly tidy. Okay, last two, as far as petals go. Oh, did I Boolean these together? Let me make sure. Yeah, all right, so it's all one piece. Mesh. Export. And the setting. And I might as well export the stone while I'm here. Okay, so that's that. It's a whole bunch of pieces. I'm going to 3D code now. Come into the sculpt room and set up some new layers. Now these should self-title as I fill them in, but I just started with a couple. And I don't have enough. I'll add them as I need them. Right click, import object. Here's the cuff object, open. Set up my, I respect negative volumes. I import as child. I import without voxelization. That's very important. I auto scale. And I apply. Yes, I want to keep things actual size. And continue. Import. Object. Magnolia 1. Make sure things remain checked. They should now. It should go pretty smoothly. smooth, and you see the folders are self-naming themselves now. So, the layers. Going to zoom in a little bit so I can see what's going on a little better. And import. Actually, I'm not sure where I was. Hang on. Yeah, Magnolia 3. Apply. The reason I hit the smooth brush is because if it didn't come in right, it will show as, it'll disappear on you, actually. So by hitting that, any of these brushes over here, it makes the object the color it actually is, which makes it easy to see if you've gotten it in properly or not. See, it's got that gray color. And when I hit apply, it's still kind of transparent. Once I hit smooth, it should look nice and solid. Okay, I'm going to need to add some more layers. Okay. Import. Six. Apply. Smooth. Import. Apply. Smooth. Import object. Apply and smooth. Import object. Apply and smooth. Import object. Apply. Smooth. I'm going to need one more layer after this, and may as well add it now. Import object. Setting. Smooth. Capuchon. So, there, I have everything in from my original Rhino file. I'm going to go ahead and apply shaders to these so that I can tell them apart easily. Cuff I will do in a dark color. Magnolia 1, Magnolia 2, Magnolia 3, Magnolia 4, and so on. Magnolia 5, Magnolia 6. This is a very big file, by the way. 7, 8, 9. Interesting. Why do I have 2 of these here? Oh. I don't know. And Magnolia 9. my setting. And my cabochon. Okay. So there are all my pieces. I have a duplicate here, which I'll delete. All right, so I've brought everything in. Everything has a material or a shader. Now I have to resample everything. 3D Coat brings this information in very, very sparse. It is not modelable in the resolution it brings it in at. So each one of these I'm going to right click and I'm going to hit resample. And I'm going to go at least 10 times what it is now. So that's 7,000, so it's going to be at least 70,000. I'll round it up to 100,000. Smooth. Hit OK. And take a look. What I really want to see is how the edges are being treated. Okay? That is not a really crisp corner. So I'm going to resample it again at 200,000. Better, but still kind of chunky. 500,000. Now remember, this is a large part also. Although that's a relative term inside of 3D Coat. It doesn't really have dimensions so much here. Okay, at 500,000, I'm fine. So that one's done. Magnolia 1, resample. It's at 3,000. I'm going to do this at 100,000. I think that'll work for most of the petals. By the way, I'm not sure which one that was. I think it's back here. I believe that was one of these. Interesting. Oh, it's the lowest one. I remember. It's right here. I don't love how chunky that is. I also don't like how responsive it is to the brush. I'm going to undo and resample it again. I made it 100,000. I'll double that. That's good. So I'm going to do all of them the same. And you can see I'm getting some strange things along the edge, but I still think that's okay. For what I'm going to want to do, I think it's fine. I'm going to be smoothing all those corners anyway, so it doesn't really matter. So a fair portion of the workflow coming into Coat with something like this is to setting it up. For those of you who haven't worked in Coat before, revolving screen is left-click drag. That's your revolve. Pan is middle-click. and zoom is right drag. This one concerns me. This is one of the more involved pedals, and I don't know if 200,000 is going to cut it. I may have to go up. Take a look. Actually, held together all right. Okay, the setting. I would actually more than likely use the Rhino model for the setting. I don't really like when you resample, as you can see, you lose some crispness, and that setting is a very tight mechanical object. So I don't want to lose really any of its crispness. But in case I want to model with it at all in here, I am going to have to resample it anyway. But I will be resampling it very high. You can see it's at 13,000. It has more faces than anything in here. Started out with. So at 13,000, I'm going to go 300,000. And what I want to see is I want to see what that does to the tips of the prongs and the joints between the prongs. Layers here work like in every other program. Click on the eye and they turn off. This connection is also getting really soft. So I'm going to resample it again. 400,000. I don't think I'll go above that. That'll do. And the cabochon, I don't intend to model with it at all, but in case I want to use it as a cutting tool or something, 7,000, 200,000 will certainly cover the cab. There. That is my completed part brought in. All right, so I've gone to a lot of trouble to get it here. Okay. The root won't let me rename it, which is unfortunate. So I'm going to add a new layer. In 3D Coat, layers become objects. Layers can also become storage folders. Sometimes it's hard to tell which is which. I'll be honest with you. And I'm going to rename that to just an overall name. And then I'm going to change the parent for each one of these. To Magnolia Cuff. The reason I'm going to do that is I'm going to create a safety. So what I'm doing is just right-clicking on each one of these. Hit Change Parent and select Magnolia Cuff. These can nest into each other ad infinitum. So I have to be careful and not pick the wrong parent, because it can become parent, it can be child to the setting just as easily. So. There. And while I have that now, right click, clone. And you will see it says copy, copy, copy. Rename. That way, if I ruin anything, I have a copy of it. And that's it. I'm ready to start working. So I'm going to save this so I don't lose anything. Okay, so it seems like a lot of time to spend on a video for setup, but setting up in 3D Code is one of the most technical things to do. You can have all kinds of fun once you're set up, but if you're not set up, you can't do anything. Okay, my main concern is the pedals, so I'll turn off the cuff, cabochon, in the setting. You have two ways to view your model here. You can do it perspective or ortho. Okay, if you click on this, it changes between them. I've always preferred to do ortho. There's a real fisheye quality to the lens to me when I'm working in perspective. It seems too distorted. I would love to be able to control the lens focal length in here, but they don't really allow it. I'm going to go with the pedal here that scares me the most. Now if I click on the circle next to it, it makes it so that these now are ghosted, which means I can work through them. If you have a fully on layer, hold on one second. Had an overhead lamp, and that was giving me glare. If you, if all your layers on and you start to sculpt on a pedal, you hit one of the ones that's, that's overlapping or it's buried into, your brush won't keep sculpting. It'll actually stop at the surface of the other object, which can be nice and can be helpful, but it can also be very frustrating. By turning off, and I'm actually curious for a minute here. Yeah, good. I'm using a stylus. I'm using a drawing tablet. Actually, I'm using a pen display where I can draw right on the screen. These sculpting tools are all of them are pressure sensitive. So using a pressure sensitive stylus makes a lot of sense. One of my favorite soft smoothing tools is the fillet tool, or the fill tool, I should say. But done with the invert tool, so that as I brush with this tool, instead of filling in material, it takes it away. If I right-click drag, which on my stylus is the back button, if I right-click, control, and drag, or just right-click, drag, left to right increases the size. If I right-click, drag up and down, the more that arc comes to, the closer it comes or goes beyond the edge, it's 100% if it touches the edge. So if you want it to be subtle, you back it off a little. And I need to select the layer I want to work on. And you can see that works very nicely for just softening that without doing anything really aggressive to it. So that's usually a good place to start with anything that comes out of Rhino. If I want to revolve and I put here, I'm going to end up trying to draw onto something. or sculpt. Now, since these are all deactivated, I can't draw on it, so I'm okay. But there's like a clutch you can use, and that is to hold down on Alt key, and that allows you to, I could actually put it right on top of this, and it allows me to navigate the screen without making any impact. And then if I let go of the Alt key, you can tell because the brush emblem comes back. Now down in here, I actually want to use the regular fill. So I'm going to hold the Control key down to invert. And I'm just going to fill that right in. I'm going to do the same thing here. Both of which would be very difficult to do in Rhino, but are quite easy to pull off in here. Okay, I don't care for how high. By the way, the reason that happened, Shift key brings up a quick tool select menu, whereas Alt key is that clutch that allows me to revolve the screen without making any impact on the model, without making any marks with my brush. And those two buttons are keys are side by side, so you'll see that happen a lot in this video. Move. I'm going to use the Move tool, a very large Move tool. And I'm going to use it to sink this pedal down in. I'm going to keep moving around as I do it because you are moving in three-dimensional space here, and it's very easy to get lost. It's very easy to have an unintended effect. Okay, that's fine. And now I want to do some actual, more actual sculpting on this. So to do that, I'm going to use a brush which I call Rapid. I like to model with Rapid set very low. Right now it's a depth of 38%. I'd like to set it down to 5 or even 3. Very, very low and fairly small. And I'm going to, it normally will add material. I want to remove material, so I hold Control key down to invert. I don't want to have that hard corner anymore at all. I want this to round up almost right up to the lip. Now to smooth that out, I hold down the Shift key, and the smoothing option for that brush is activated, which allows me to smooth out what I've done. I'm going to do the same thing here. Control to invert. And I'm just going to round this off. And once again, it's pressure sensitive, so if I push hard, I will lose a lot of material. If I push gently, I'll lose a little. So this allows me to take this pretty quickly from being a very blocky sort of form that it was in Rhino to a much more gradual form. Use the smoothing variant with Shift key. I'm going to stay away from that point because that point will get wiped away really quickly if I'm aggressive with it at all, and I don't want that to happen. Okay. Now I am going to mollify that point. I'm going to do it two ways. I'm going to go back to the fill brush with the inverted option. and I'm going to touch it. Now, it's not changing anything. And what that tells me is that this is in the mesh. You can get a feature in the mesh that does not want to budge. Okay? I'm able to move it up and down, but I'm not able to do anything better than that. All right? When that happens, using a brush that actually cuts material away, which Rapid does, can be effective, but I'm going to assume, see, it's letting me smudge around it, but it's keeping it there. It's a great time now to talk about voxel versus surface. 3D Coat is a voxel program, which means instead of working with meshes, its native language is working with little square cube pixels. They're called voxels. Voxel technology is amazing. It's why I love this software so much, because when you have a voxel object, it's by default it becomes a geometric solid. And geometric solids are 3D printable. So it just solves a lot of problems. But it's not a great technology for doing a lot of modeling with detail modeling. What will happen if I hit on this S and turn it into voxel, it'll resample that surface as a voxel object. Now that's voxeled. If I hit the spacebar, voxel has its own tools. They look similar, but they are slightly different. And one of these tools is scrape. But I also have a fill here. I'm going to try the fill. Inverted, and see if in the voxel mode, if it'll let me take off that point. That same soft polishing. And you'll see that it does. That point is now gone. The smooth brush, which is an overall smoothing brush, is very powerful in voxel mode as well. So if I'm trying to smooth things out, that works very well in voxel mode. Okay, so now that I've voxeled it, that basically scrambles the mesh so that when I go back to the mesh, I don't want to bake in color. So just say no to that. So there I have it now as a mesh object. So now I'm back to mesh tools. And now you will see that when I come in here with any of my tools, that corner is no longer stubborn. It'll now do what I ask it to do. And what I would like it to do is I would like it to duck down in a little bit using the move tool. Now the problem is that's actually going to move both of those, and I don't want to move both of those, so I'm not going to do that. Back to Rapid 2. I don't want it to what I'm doing to affect this lower stem. So I'm going to freeze it so that it can't be inadvertently impacted. Excuse me. Everything that's black will now be immune from my sculpting actions. Because what I want to do is I want to lower this edge. But I don't want to damage anything inside. So back to Rapid. Invert by holding down the Control key. And now I can when you come to corners, it's iffy. The mesh starts to give in a very aggressive way. And you don't want it to completely, go back and forth between the fill tool and Rapid 2. Another great tool I like is Build Up. Not that large. That's once again right click, drag right to left. I'm going to invert this so that the default usually is adding material. This does a little, it's a different, shouldn't say better, shouldn't say worse. If you're finding that using the same brush again and again and again is giving you kind of a similar texture that you're getting tired of, you can change tools to something else to kind of alleviate that, like any other medium. Okay. It's using the smoothing aspect. But I want to be careful because actually I want some of that crispness, right? I want to feel some of that edge of the pedal. That's actually fun. I'm actually going to restore some of it, I've decided, that I've lost by using the pinch tool. I don't like the rounded curve on this, so I'm going to go to the brushes. Right now it's set to the default. I would like something with a point. Now I can't remember for sure if this is in or out when I start. It's in, so I'm going to hold down the control key to make it go out. And that'll allow me to pull a crease back onto that, because I would like that. There's a thinness to a flower petal that I don't want to lose. Okay, go back to smooth. Got to be careful, because if I get too close to that edge, I will lose it. So if I'm afraid of losing an edge, I could freeze everything up to the edge. I'm not going to bother with that right now, though. This is working well. Now, there is a cleft here that I want to accentuate. So I will do that. I'll use the build-up brush again. Inverted. And I'm going to be a little bit aggressive with it. And hollow out this section of the pedal. A little softer, feathering it away. Come back in. I want it pretty pronounced. Change my brush strokes in different directions to get more of what I want. I really want that to be basically almost a fold. And then I would like that to round off. Now that's a pretty powerful brush right now, the depth. Gotta go back to my Rapid 2. Because it's set to a much lower depth. It'll allow me to come in and nuance some of that. And then smooth. And you can see you can kill an awful lot of time doing this. So, especially in terms of a video, me doing a whole lot of this, it's going to get boring for you to watch. And I don't want that for you or for me. But I think you can see that this petal, which was a very blocky form in Rhino, has now become a much more nuanced form here. And that's what I'm looking for. I do like the crisp edge overlapping this, so come back in here and grab my pinch tool, invert, and pull the crisp edge back. If it's too crisp, I'm going to get that little flash, and I don't like that. I don't want flashing on it. Also, if I want it to be smooth, it's already got steady stroke. Steady stroke, setting that number will give you like smoothing in a Photoshop brush. Treat that a little more sensitively. There. Okay. Now, do I want this to do what it's doing there, where it, you know, comes up in like that? Not so much. No, I don't. Build up brush, invert. If I go to Hog Wild, I'm going to mess with how this interacts with the petal underneath, which I don't really want to do. So, a smaller brush. And if I get tired of holding down Control, I can just hit Invert Tool, and then that becomes the native direction. And if I wanted to add material now, I would have to hold Control key. See, I would like to be able to feel an honest overhang here. I can't have an honest overhang. That's a casting problem and a finishing problem. But I would like more of the feeling of an overhang. Keep changing directions. Keep revolving. So that you see what's happening. But basically, I don't want anything blocky, so if I wanted blocky, I'd have stayed in Rhino. Gonna unfreeze. Now, I don't really want it, so I'm going to do another freeze, but this time I'm going to freeze everything surrounding this lower pedal stem, because I don't want to destroy anything that I've just done. Fine. Build it. Why not? It's been working well for me so far. This is supposed to be a very rounded off, kind of almost a U cross section. And it is supposed to have a very distinct fall away at one end. It's supposed to climb up before intersecting with that. So give it a little softer feeling. And a bit more of that drop. And obviously you can do this as much or as little as you want. So that is much softer. Okay. Unfreeze all. I think that'll do. That pedal is a much more organic thing than it was. Okay, so that one is good. I want this one next. Okay. I would like this pedal to have a crease running down the middle of it. So I'm going to go back to my build up. I'm going to change it so that it has a pointed draft. Oh, I'm selecting the wrong. There we go. You got to select the layer you want to work on. Now I don't have a lot of room at the outside edge of this. So I'm going to stay back from that. Smaller. I would like to bring in that pinch tool. This time using its native direction. Use freeze. Then block off the top portion. That'll allow me to get more aggressive. Down in here. I do want kind of a cup. Smooth it out. Freeze invert. Going to refine some of that frozen area because I would like it to come more precisely there. I'm going to go to build up again, and this time I'm going to go back to the rounded brush alpha, and I don't want it to invert, so I'll hit down the control button so I can add material. Now you see I have this strange little artifact in here that does not want to go away. I can guarantee you that that is a mesh issue. I'll ignore it for now. But it's going to require me to go voxel with this and then back to remove that stubborn. Keep moving it around so you can see what it is that you're doing. Okay. Unfreeze all. You can see I have made quite an impact on the form of that petal. I'm going to voxel this, and then I'm going to unvoxel. Actually, I'm going to try and get rid of that artifact if it's still there. Voxelizing it will often just remove it. Yeah, it's gone. Go back to mesh. Okay, I need to round the corners. Invert this. It's already set to invert. Use that inverted fill tool to just round that off. And you can decide how aggressive you want to get with that. I want to turn off this green petal in front. I'm not sure where it's at. I think it's one of the higher ones. There we go. So that I can round this off properly. Build up. Oh, if you quick, like I just was, you can actually remove the brush from your top 10 brushes. Looks like I've already lost one here. Not sure which one. Probably pinch. And it's not set to invert, so I'll invert it. Whoa. That's build clay. That was the wrong brush. I don't want build clay. I want build up. Dangerously similar icon. And that is already set to. Now I'm dealing with some pretty serious depth. I'm dealing at 20% depth. And one of the things I would really recommend when you're learning how to sculpt is that you get comfortable working with very shallow depths, 5%, 10% at the most. I've been doing this for a while and I'm in a hurry this evening, so I can come in much more aggressively than I normally would. But I don't recommend doing that. I recommend taking your time. Slow is careful, careful's fast. But there's no point in having that flat sidewall. It's not an attractive feature, so I'll remove it. Having a little bit of a lip there is useful for defining form. Now you can move the light source here. By pulling this around. But I find it just as easy to rotate the model around. Okay. I'm going to want to freeze again. Just so I can come in here and get some of this the way I want it. See, right now it's dishing, but then it's climbing back up. And I don't want that. I suspect that the reason it's doing that is because the size of my brush. I'm going to do a smaller, more aggressive brush. And I'm going to see if I go too deep, you can see the other petal starting to show through. So I can't do that. So rather than do that, I'm going to just hit right along the edge of that freeze zone. See, I'm exposing here. I don't really care about that though, because that corner will be missing. I'll round that corner off. Okay, that's good. Buildup is still good. Now I'm going to do a larger, shallower, and I'm going to invert it back to fill, because I want to create a valley coming into that. And since I don't have the depth available in the part to do that, I can create the effect of it. And use the Rapid 2. To tidy that up a little bit in there. I want to round this off. I have to be careful though, because it'd be very easy for me to completely remove this lip going to make for a muddy model. But I do think I want it rounded here. How rounded remains to be seen. And that mesh is going to try and hold on to that point, which is okay for now. Big smooth brush. Invert, well, actually just unfreeze for now. Okay, now I'm going to freeze the other side. I didn't want to invert freeze straight up because it would have also frozen some of what I want to get at here. Control inverts the freeze, which means it erases it. You do better to do a long stroke instead of a bunch of little strokes. Okay. Build up. I want to fill that in a little bit. I want to round this off quite a bit. And once again, this flat sidewall doesn't do anything for me, sculpturally speaking, so I'm very comfortable taking it off. To finesse that, I'm going to want to use the Rapid 2, which I just tapped too fast and lost. They've recently updated this program, and when they did, they moved the location of some of the tools. It's got to be right in here. Rapid, right here. Rapid Smooth, that's the one I want. Now, the larger this tool is in area, obviously the more it's going to smooth out large areas. Take them down. And the question as to how to handle this tip is an interesting question. I haven't made a decision yet. I do remember in Rhino that it was important to me to have that pop up at the end. And I don't want to go changing my mind on that just because I'm in here with a sculpting brush. Unfreeze all. I'm going to voxel it. Use the fill tool, inverted, just to polish that out and make sure I'm not going to have a problem. Back to surface mount. I want to fill in, just regular fill, not inverted. Control key down. Fill in this groove. Not sure what I'm going to do here. A quick pass. I don't want to lose that. It was hard to reclaim it. I'm not sure what to do with that. I'll be honest. Whether I want to build it out or take it down. Or just keep it vague. When in doubt, keep it vague. But see, I have lost the pop-up that I was going for initially, which I'm not happy about. So this is what I think I'm going to do. Hollow it down below. And let it climb up. From about there. No, that looks like a ribbon. It was a fun idea, but it doesn't work. Okay. Lay this out as a single surface. Let that fade. And really what I'm trying to do is just show you what you can do in here. Me getting the solution right is not a necessary part of the video. I would get it right eventually, I am confident. But I actually like the idea that this just fades out. A little standard fill. Like so. Okay. And then to get that point back up the way I wanted it, Now I have to be careful because at this point that's sticking out. So I can't do a large radius because I don't want to lift the bottom. I just want to lift the top. Like so. That brings some of that back in. And I'm going to stop working on this petal. That's enough for making a commentary or a statement on how organic it is or isn't. Fine. Okay. So something that is certainly a lot more organic than what it had started out as. Something that has a lot more interesting form going on. Okay. So, next one up, and probably the last one I will do in this video, would be the large green one here, because this one has some of the concerns as far as thickness and whatnot that I was dealing with before. So, and deactivate that one. The same basic principles, fill, inverted, to just round the corners. Expecting some issues in the meshes where they come to points. And the reason for that is that Rhino doesn't make a quad mesh by nature. It does a lot of n-gons, which means polygons that aren't four-sided. And all sculpting software thinks in squares. So when you have an n-gon, 5, 6, 3, 7-sided geometry, these programs don't know what to do with them. They can freeze it so that it holds it in place and looks like what you wanted it to look like, but it probably is going to end up with some somewhat locked geometry. I'm going to round both sides of this because I really don't have any use for this really heavily side-walled form. Okay, so I've got that. Now I'm going to decide what I want to do with the rest of the leaf. I would like to hollow it out a little bit in the middle, sink it. So, build up brush, large, and inverted. And I'm really playing with pressure sensitivity here. Very light strokes where I don't want to do a lot. Heavier strokes where I do. By the way, those heavier strokes happen where I happen to have a thickness of material to work with. I'm not going to do a lot of this down at the point because I don't have very much material. Wouldn't make any sense. Shift key to use the smoothing mode. And now I'd like to raise a little bit up through here. And smooth. Maybe imply a little bit of a valley or a seam center line. But I don't want it harsh like on the other one. It's enough. Okay. Shrink the brush down. Round off the corners. Being more careful about it as I approach the tip. And more aggressive about it where I have an actual sidewall that I don't love. And where it's not going to hurt the form to do that. Here I need to keep it up so that it gives me a differentiation between that petal and the one next to it. But then I can round that off. But I've got to come back to my senses before I get to the point. Clean all of that up with the Rapid 2 set low. Smooth it. Almost like a hatched line to transition that sidewall away. Alright, I will do a pinch tool. Big, shallow. Don't care for that. Okay. That gives me some ideas. Actually, I kind of like this veined feeling. Gotta soften it though. Polish up some of this with the inverted fill tool. Careful doing that because you can actually change the shape if you're not cautious. Pick up some more of that pinched edge here, except for inverted, so it lifts it. And a bit of it here. Done. Okay, so probably smooth some of this out. Nice big smoothing brush. All right, so that's fine. Now, I'm going to end this video because I don't have the time to keep sculpting this. I do want to show you though, this pedal, the first one we started working on, has become a little bit low. Okay, that's a challenge for me because I don't like this really flat, kind of smushed in feeling that I have. I'm going to right click, make sure I get the right one, this one. I'm going to right click on it and do a clone. It's right there. Now I want to be able, it's important for me to clear out some of the surrounding geometry so I can see what I am doing. So I have these are right on top of each other right now. I can orient by revolving and holding the shift key, it'll lock to an orthographic view. If I hold the shift key again while I rotate this move tool, I only move the gizmo, I don't move and what I'm trying to do is get that set up so that when I now grab it, and lift it up, that's my copy. And by doing that, I have increased the height just a little bit. Hold shift key down so that I don't move the actual model. And by doing this, I can tweak it just a little bit. See, I'm not sure every little movement causes a distortion somewhere else. So that's okay. I'm now going to turn back on the other leaves, petals, so I can see if that's given me enough material to alleviate my feelings of it not sitting up enough. It could use a little more. Shift key. Gonna lift it just a touch. Higher. Now that's pretty aggressive. Half that. Okay, I'm going to call that good. Now, I'm going to go ahead and turn these back off again. So that I have a clear view of the petal. And I'm going to turn back on my Magnolia original, and I'm going to, I can click on either one. Right click on Magnolia 3, and I can hit merge with. It's a Boolean. It's programmed Booleans better than anything I have ever seen before. Now the problem is, and this I may pay for, you should make it voxel before you do that. But it accepted it. Undo. Redo. Yeah, it didn't work. Voxel. Voxel. All Boolean actions should be done in a voxel mode. There we go. So now I have this weird little wavy line going all the way around my petal. I think you can imagine how big of a problem that's going to be. Fill with control so that it does its normal filling in of material. Smooth. Smooth. Filling in. Oh, by the way, I'm in voxel mode. That's why it's not being very responsive. Modeling always works better in surface mode. Sorry, there we go. Fill, smooth. Yeah, I was wondering what was going on. Because usually this sort of thing would be really a single pass. Just like that. And that allows me to get thickness without adding, or sorry, moving up the bottom, because the bottom location is important on this. Okay, that's enough. So, that gives me a lot better elevation to work with. So I only did 3 petals, but those petals are much more organic and much more of what you would want for a project like this. All of this can go back out to Rhino very easily. I can clone this again. And now I will turn all of these into voxel mode, except for the cabochon and the setting, which I won't include. Merge subtree. Oh, the other tree had surface objects in it. I will wait it out for a minute. I wanted to pull it back into Rhino and show it to you there. Okay. I was able to save it. File did in fact corrupt, not corrupt, but crash, due to my nonsensical trying to Boolean a surface and a voxel object together. But here we have them all Boolean together, and I'm going to now take them out of here and put them in Rhino, so you can compare and see, that it actually does go back and forth easily. So first thing you do with the finished object is you fill voids. That way, if there are any pockets or hollows, they get filled. Guarantees you have a geometric solid. Then you export the selected object. I always export, as I said, out of Coat, 3D Coat. I export out as an STL. It's going to ask me if I want to reduce the density of the mesh, simplify it, and absolutely I do. This program is better at optimizing mesh than any program I've ever seen. At 50%, it's already got it down to 690 faces, which is plenty. You can drop it to 85% and the detail will remain. It's really powerful. And there it goes. And I'm actually going to save this over the original, because this is the saved file that I was able to rescue. And going over into Rhino. Select a good color layer to bring the object in on. Whatever layer is selected is the layer your import will come in on. Import. And cuff from video. It comes in as millimeters. Just accept the defaults. Now it'll always come in rotated because the axes are different. Almost all 3D programs have Y as your vertical world axis. Rhino has Z. So while it will remember the size, you will have to rotate it back up. Like so. And I'm going to move the mesh to one side or to the front so you can compare them. And you can see its actual size. And it gives you a nice indication of how that sculpting effect would work for this model. And it's certainly a much more appropriate way to treat this than in Rhino. You could actually achieve a similar effect in Rhino if you are willing to take the time. But it would be an awful lot of time. And you can create the same effect quickly, effectively, and sensitively using sculpting software such as 3D Coat, which I've used in this video, or ZBrush, which is a more sophisticated and more expensive and more powerful solution. Okay? But I like 3D Coat. That's what I use for almost all of my work. Thanks so much for watching.